Valentine's night, Sotto Voce. I walked into the restaurant I used to manage carrying a manila folder and 14 years of proof. Margot and my business partner, Trent Hollander, sat at table 9, our first date table. Reservation under Kessler, her maiden name. She wore her hair in loose curls. The evening version of herself. Trent set down his wine glass. I pulled out the chair across from them and placed the folder on the white tablecloth. Margot's hand rose to the scar above her eyebrow. Her wine glass tilted. Nothing came out. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and comment what time it is where you are. Your support means everything. Before the wine cellar beneath glass and the candlelit tables and the handshakes with lawyers who tipped in hundreds, I was a 15-year-old kid bussing tables at Merle's Diner on Franklin Boulevard in Gastonia. Minimum wage, grease burns on my forearms, rubber-soled shoes that squeaked on tile. Merle himself taught me the first rule of hospitality. Every person who walks through that door is the most important person in the room. Treat them like it. I worked every station over 3 years. Dish pit first, then prep cook, then the line, then front of house. By 18, I could run a floor, read a table's mood from 20 feet away, and time a kitchen so plates hit the pass together. No culinary school, no connections. Just the hours, Charlotte's restaurant kitchens in my early 20s. 12-hour shifts at steakhouses and bistros and southern fusion places that opened hot and closed in 8 months. I moved through 4 kitchens in 6 years, learning what worked and what didn't, watching managers who screamed and managers who led. I took the best from each one and filed the rest away. At 27, I became the youngest manager Sotto Voce had ever hired. Charlotte's premier Italian restaurant. Exposed brick, an open kitchen you could watch like theater, and a wine cellar visible through a glass panel in the floor near the entrance. I ran that dining room like a conductor. Knew every server's name, their kids' names, their schedules. Knew which sommelier to pair with which table. Knew how to make a Tuesday night feel like Saturday. That's where I met Margot. I'd organized a wine tasting in the private dining room. 30 guests, 6 courses, a Barolo vertical that cost the restaurant more than my monthly salary. She came with a friend and sat in the second row, honey blonde hair catching the candlelight, asking questions about tannin structure that told me she'd done her homework. Afterward, she found me at the bar while I was reconciling the evening's numbers. I admire a man who builds something from nothing, she said. I looked up from my receipts. Sharp cheekbones, dark brown eyes that held mine a beat longer than expected, a smile that made me want to earn the next one. We married within a year. I was 30 when I left Sotto Voce. Trent Hollander, a buddy I'd known since my early 20s when we both worked the bar scene on East Boulevard, had been pitching me on a catering venture for months. Trent had an MBA from Queen's University of Charlotte, family money from his father's commercial real estate holdings in South Park, and the kind of polish that opened doors in boardrooms where I'd never been invited. I knew food, operations, and how to make people feel taken care of. He knew spreadsheets and business development. On paper, it was the right partnership. We signed the lease on a commercial kitchen off South Boulevard. 3,500 square feet. Walk-in coolers, 6 prep stations, a loading dock for the catering vans. The space smelled like industrial cleaner and cold concrete, and every footstep echoed off the bare walls. Trent set up a glassed-in corner office with a separate entrance and a password, protected laptop for the financials. I took the kitchen side. The division was clean. I never questioned it. Building the client base took years, handshake by handshake. I drove to every law firm Christmas party, every medical practice open house, every country club, spring gala in Mecklenburg County. I tasted menus with managing partners who'd never eaten a meal they couldn't bill to overhead. I learned their wives' dietary restrictions, their preferred wines, their seating feuds. One firm led to two led to 5. Within 3 years, we were doing 40 events a month. Within 8, the business was pulling $1.2 million annually. Trent handled the books. I handled the food and the people. 60-hour weeks became the baseline. Not a phase, not a rough patch. The standard. I loaded catering vans at 5 a.m. and broke down banquet halls at midnight. I missed my daughter Josie's 3rd-grade play because a corporate client moved their rehearsal dinner up by 2 days. I missed her 5th-grade award ceremony for a plumbing emergency at the kitchen. I arrived home after my son Theo was asleep, more nights than I made it home before his bedtime. Every missed moment, I told myself the same thing. This is for them. This is how a man builds a life. The house was part of that equation. A 1920s craftsman bungalow on East Park Avenue in Dilworth, Charlotte's historic neighborhood where the trees arched over the streets and the porches had character. When we bought it, the place needed everything. Buckled hardwood floors, rotting porch columns, a kitchen last updated when Nixon was in office. I renovated it room by room on weekends, got on my knees, and sanded the original hardwood until the grain came through, then sealed it with 3 coats of polyurethane. I pulled the rotting porch columns myself and rebuilt them from pressure-treated lumber, matching the original craftsman profile with a router and a template I made from the one surviving column. The screened-in back porch was my addition. Framed it, screened it, wired it for a ceiling fan. That porch became my favorite room in the house. I read to Theo on that porch. Every night, I made it home before 8. 7 years old, brown eyes like mine, a quiet kid who liked books about space and asked questions I couldn't always answer. Why are some stars already dead when we see them? I don't know, buddy. Let's look it up tomorrow. He'd nod, serious as a judge, and turn the page. Saturdays belonged to Josie, 11 years old, competitive, stubborn in the best way. I coached her rec league soccer team, the Dilworth Strikers, not because I knew anything about soccer, but because I knew about showing up. I was there every Saturday morning at 8 a.m., clipboard in hand, orange slices in the cooler, running drills I'd learned from YouTube the night before. She played center midfield in their green and white jerseys. Left foot stronger than her right. She got that from her mother. The BBQ was mine. Every few weekends, I hauled my custom smoker to county fairs and regional cook-offs across the Carolinas. I'd welded the smoker myself from a 250-gallon propane tank, painted it matte black, and stenciled the words "Low and Slow Justice" on the firebox in white block letters. My competition team was just me and whatever buddy I could convince to wake up at 4 a.m. on a Saturday. I never won first place. Not once. Had a wall of third-place ribbons in the garage, though. 8 of them, framed, hung in a neat row above my workbench. Most people would be embarrassed. I was proud. 3rd place against pit masters who'd been smoking meat since before I was born. 3rd place with a homemade smoker and grocery store rubs I modified with my own ratios. After every competition, I sat in my truck and logged everything in a leather-bound journal. Brisket internal temp at every hour, wood type and chunk size, rub composition down to the quarter teaspoon, ambient temperature, humidity, wind direction, time the bark set, time the stall hit, time I wrapped. The journal had 73 entries over 6 years. Each one a data point, each one proof that if you track the details long enough, the answer showed itself. Patience isn't a virtue in barbecue. It's the whole religion. Margot had her own way of building. She kept scrapbooks, 11 of them displayed on a custom shelf I'd built into the living room wall. Leather-bound, acid-free pages, layouts that could have run in a design magazine. Josie's first birthday with the pink balloon arch. The family trip to Wrightsville Beach where Theo buried my legs in sand. Christmas mornings arranged by year, matching pajamas, the tree always in the background, always the same angle. She photographed everything and posted the highlights to Instagram. Blessed beyond measure. This man, my everything. The comments were always the same. Goals. So beautiful. Lucky girl. I believed every page. Thousands of nights, I came home smelling like someone else's event. Grilled salmon, roasted lamb, whatever the client had ordered. I'd hang my keys on the hook by the door, and there would be a plate in the microwave. Foil on top, fork beside it. Margot would come out in her robe, hair in the daytime bun, and kiss me on the cheek. How was it? Good, long, same exchange, same kiss, same plate warming behind the glass door. I counted on that ritual the way I counted on sunrise. It was proof. Proof that the 60-hour weeks mattered. Proof that the missed plays and late nights and aching knees from kneeling on hardwood floors were building something that would last. The screened-in porch I'd framed with my own hands. The floors I'd sanded on my knees. The business I'd grown client by client, handshake by handshake. The soccer practices, the bedtime stories, the third-place ribbons, all of it added up to a life I was proud of. Not a flashy life, not the life Trent lived with his family money and his golf club membership, but a real one, built from nothing, built by hand. I looked at those 11 scrapbooks on the shelf I'd cut and mounted and finished, and I saw 14 years of a family that worked because I worked. The smiling faces, the matching pajamas, the beach vacations where Margot looked tan and happy and mine. I know now that she'd been documenting a life she was already planning to leave. That the scrapbooks weren't a record. They were a cover story. That while I was refinishing floors and coaching soccer and logging brisket temperatures with the precision of a man who believed in doing things right, she was building something too, just not with me. The shift didn't come all at once. That's not how a smoke ring forms. Heat doesn't penetrate a brisket in a flash. It works inward, fraction of a degree at a time, until the meat doesn't know when it stopped being raw. Margot started with comments. Small ones, tossed into conversations the way you'd toss salt over your shoulder. We were at a dinner party at the Callaway House in Myers Park. 6 couples, 2 bottles of Sancerre Deep, the kind of evening where Charlotte's professional class perform for each other across white linen and candlelight. The Sancerre was too warm. No one else noticed. Trent was there. He'd been invited separately, the way business partners sometimes are in a city where social and professional circles overlap like Venn diagrams drawn by the same hand. He was telling a story about a client dinner at Quail Hollow Club, the kind of golf club story where everyone laughs because the storyteller expects it. I'd moved to the far end of the table to refill my glass when I heard Margot's voice carry from the other side. She was leaning toward the woman beside her, a dermatologist's wife whose name I've forgotten. Trent went to Queens for his MBA, she said. His family's been in Charlotte real estate for 3 generations. He's the one who really handles the business side. The woman glanced down the table in my direction. So your husband handles the creative side? Margot smiled. The warm one. The one that made you feel included even when you were being excluded. Silas is more of the hands-on type. He runs the kitchen. She didn't say he built the client list, didn't say he drove revenue from 0 to 7 figures through 5 years of personal relationships. She said he runs the kitchen, like I was still bussing tables at Merle's. I heard it. I set my fork down, picked it back up, and kept eating. That was the first crack. The comments multiplied over months. At her book club's annual potluck, she introduced me to a new member. This is Silas. He used to manage Charlotte's best restaurant, but he traded it in for catering. I shook the new member's hand and smiled, held it together. But I felt the word traded land like a grade on a scorecard, like leaving Sotto Voce for something I built with my own hands was a bad deal. At Thanksgiving that year, her mother Lorraine made the point explicit. Lorraine Kessler, 64 years old, divorced for 22 of them, a woman whose bitterness had calcified into a philosophy she preached like gospel. She sat at the head of our dining table in the Dilworth house, eating turkey I'd brined for 3 days, and addressed Margot as though I wasn't in the room. Love is lovely, but security is survival, she said, swirling her Chardonnay. Your father loved me too, right up until he loved someone younger and I was 41 with a mortgage I couldn't pay. She looked at me then. The look was quick, but I caught it. The audit in her eyes. The calculation. She was measuring me against her ex-husband and finding the same deficiencies. Silas, honey, she said, how's business? Good, I told her, up 12% this quarter. That's nice, she said, the way a restaurant critic says interesting about a dish they'll never order again. Margot watched the exchange over the rim of her glass and said nothing. That silence was its own kind of statement. I cleared the dishes and washed them by hand while Lorraine and Margot sat in the living room flipping through scrapbook number 9. Their laughter carried through the doorway, not the kind that invites you in, the kind that closes a door. The Thursday absences started 6 months after the Callaway dinner party. Book club, Margot said, pulling on her coat by the front door. I'll be back by 10. She kept her hair in a tight, low bun during the day. Had for years. But on those Thursday evenings, she'd emerge from the bathroom with her hair loose and curled, falling past her shoulders, catching the hallway light differently. She wore the gold earrings her mother gave her for her 30th birthday and a perfume I didn't recognize. Her lipstick shifted a shade darker. Two versions of her, the daytime wife with the bun and the soft voice and the microwave plate. The Thursday evening, someone else with the curls and the gold and the perfume that hung in the hallway after the front door closed. I noticed. I logged it the way I logged everything. One observation, not a conclusion. Trust the process. Don't open the lid. Don't rush to judgment. The Thursdays expanded. Book club became church committee, became shopping with mother, became a vague rotation of excuses that never repeated the same way twice. She volunteered at First Baptist Church of Dilworth with a frequency that surprised me. Sunday services, Tuesday committee meetings, Wednesday food bank shifts. She quoted Pastor Amos Ridley at dinner. She signed up for the Women's Fellowship. She organized the church's fall festival and posted photos of herself arranging donated canned goods tagged with scripture. I thought she was finding faith, finding community, finding something the catering business and the 60-hour weeks had taken from her. Then she started using Josie. My daughter was 11, going on 12. She had my stubbornness and her mother's instinct for reading a room. One Thursday evening, I came home at 7:30, early for once, and found Josie in the kitchen doing homework at the island. "Where's Mom?" I asked. She looked up from her math worksheet. "Book club," she said, to tell you she'd be back by 10 and there's pasta in the fridge. Josie delivered it like a weather report. No hesitation, no discomfort, which meant she'd done it before. Maybe many times. I heated the pasta and sat across from her. "When did Mom leave?" "Around 5, she said. She curled her hair first. 5 o'clock, 3 hours before I got home. Book club didn't start until 7. I ate my pasta. Josie finished her math. Neither of us said anything else about it, but the crack in the rock widened. Theo noticed things too. My son had a 7-year-old's radar for the frequencies adults thought were too high to hear. One night, on the screened-in porch, halfway through a chapter about the Andromeda Galaxy, he set the book down and looked at me. "Daddy, why does Mommy whisper on the phone?" I closed the book over my thumb to hold the page. "What do you mean, buddy?" "When you're not home." She goes in the closet and talks real quiet. Then she comes out and smiles different. Different how? He thought about it. Like when I pretend I'm not upset about something at school. I picked the book back up. "Mommy's probably just talking to Grandma about boring stuff," I said. "You know how Grandma likes to talk." He accepted it, the way children accept explanations from parents they trust. He turned the page, and we read about star clusters until his eyelids got heavy. I carried him to bed, stood in the hallway outside his door for a long time. At work, the cracks ran parallel. Trent had always kept his office door open. The glassed-in corner with the view of the loading dock, the desk with the laptop, the whiteboard where he tracked quarterly revenue. Open door, open books, open partnership. That was the deal. The door started closing. He changed the password on his laptop, the second time in a month. Then a second monitor appeared on his desk, angled away from the glass wall so the screen wasn't visible from the kitchen floor. Then I noticed another account. I need to set up a secondary operating account for vendor advances, Trent told me one morning, standing in the doorway of his office with a coffee mug that said Queen's MBA in gold lettering. Streamlines payments, so we're not cutting checks from the main account for every delivery. Makes sense, I said. It did make sense. On paper. The way all his explanations made sense on paper. He had the MBA. He had the financial vocabulary. I had the commercial kitchen and the client relationships. That was the division. I stayed on my side. He stayed on his. I never asked for access to the secondary account. Never asked what the password change was about. Never walked into his office unannounced and looked at the angled monitor. I trusted him the way I trusted the process. The way I trusted the smoker. Put the meat in, control the temperature, and let time do the work. One Thursday where Margot stayed home, I almost forgot. She laughed at something I said about a catering client who demanded a gluten-free wedding cake made entirely of bread. A real laugh, not the performance kind. She sat on the screened-in porch with me and Theo, and for a moment everything felt like it used to. The three of us under the ceiling fan I'd wired myself. The neighborhood quiet, the day finished. The next Thursday, the curls were back. The company holiday party was at a private room in a South Park restaurant. December, 2 months before Valentine's Day. 40 guests, our staff and their families, a few key clients. I'd planned the menu myself. Margot wore a black dress and the gold earrings. The loose curls, the evening version. Trent told a story about a botched event where the ice sculpture melted into the shrimp display. Everyone laughed. Margot laughed loudest. Her hand landed on his forearm, rested there, and didn't move. 2 seconds, maybe 3. Her fingers curled against the fabric of his sport coat. Trent kept talking. Margot kept smiling. Her hand stayed. I was standing 6 feet away, holding a glass of bourbon I hadn't sipped. I watched the hand, watched the fingers, watched the 2 seconds stretch into 3. One data point, not a pattern, not enough to act on. I filed it away. That night, I lay in bed next to Margot. She smelled like the perfume I didn't recognize. Her breathing was even and slow. I stared at the ceiling fan and ran the data. The Thursdays, the 2 hairstyles, Josie's cover stories, Theo's questions, Lorraine's calculations, Trent's closed door. The hand on the forearm. Each one, on its own, was nothing. A missed signal, an innocent explanation, but coincidence. Taken together, they formed a shape I wasn't ready to look at directly. I could have asked, could have said the words, "Are you sleeping with my business partner?" 7 words that would have broken the surface and let whatever was underneath come up for air. I didn't ask. I got up, walked to the screened-in porch, and sat in the dark. The brisket journal was on the side table where I'd left it. I picked it up and held it without opening it. 73 entries, each one a record of patience, each one proof that if you waited long enough, the answer came to you. I kept showing up, loaded the catering vans at 5 in the morning, coached Josie's Saturday practice, read to Theo on the porch every night I made it home, came through the door to the plate in the microwave and the kiss on the cheek. How was it? Good? Long? Same exchange. Same ritual. The ritual had meant something once. Now, It was habit. And habit isn't the same as love. And I knew it, and I kept performing it anyway, because stopping meant admitting that the thing I'd built with my hands and my hours and my patience was already gone. Patience is not a virtue. It's the whole religion. I kept telling myself that, kept believing it the way you trust a thermometer, even when you can smell the char. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reorganizing the walk-in cooler at the commercial kitchen. Phone buzzed against my hip. Pulled it out with cold hands. Saw a Charlotte number I recognized but hadn't dialed in months. Silas. It's Celine. Celine Archambault. 38 years old, French-Canadian, the maitre d' I'd trained at Sotto Voce when she was 26 and still mixing up her Barolos and her Barbarescos. I hadn't talked to her since a hospitality fundraiser the previous spring. She didn't ask how I was. No small talk, no warm-up. I need to tell you something, she said. I've been going back and forth on this for months, and I can't keep it to myself anymore. Her accent always thickened when she was nervous. Right now, every vowel landed twice. Go ahead, I said. Your wife has been dining at the restaurant every Thursday night. Table 9, for 2 years. I set down the clipboard I was holding. The cooler fan hummed above me. Table 9, I said. Your table. The one where you had your first date. She comes with a man. They used the reservation name Kessler. Kessler, Margot's maiden name. The name her mother wore like a badge. The name Margot kept on her hidden credit card, on her secret life, on every piece of herself she'd separated from me. I'm going to need you to say that again, I said. Slowly. Every Thursday, Silas. Table 9. Reservation under Kessler. 2 years. The same booth, the same time, the same man. I didn't know how to tell you. I kept thinking it would stop, that it was just dinner. But it's not just dinner, and you deserve to know. My sentences shortened. My drawl came back. The Gastonia edge I'd spent years smoothing out in Charlotte dining rooms. Who's the man? Your business partner, Trent Hollander. The walk-in cooler was 41 degrees. I couldn't feel the cold anymore. There's more, Celine said. They made a reservation for Valentine's Day. Table 9, 7:30. Under Kessler. That's what made me call. Valentine's Day at your table, Silas. I couldn't sit on it anymore. I pressed my back against the stainless steel shelving and closed my eyes. How long have you known? I asked. She paused. 8 months. She paused again. I'm sorry. I should have called sooner. I kept hoping I was wrong, that maybe it was a business dinner. But they hold hands across the table, and she wears her hair down, and they drink the Montepulciano you used to order for special occasions. I know what a date looks like. I've been seating them for 8 months. 2 years of Thursdays. 8 months of Celine watching and saying nothing. And a Valentine's reservation at the table where I proposed my second glass of wine to the woman who told me she admired a man who built something from nothing. I appreciate you telling me, I said. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I hung up and stood in the cooler for another 4 minutes, breathing fog, counting the seconds the way I counted temperature readings. The compressor cycled on. The fan pushed cold air across my face. I counted to 64 times, then walked out, closed the cooler door, and sat at the prep station. The family tracking app was on my phone. I'd installed it 3 years ago when Josie started walking home from school alone. Everyone in the family shared location. Margot had never turned hers off because she never thought I'd check. I opened the app and tapped her name. The map showed her current location, First Baptist Church of Dilworth. Tuesday, committee meeting. Normal, expected. I tapped the history tab and scrolled to Thursday. Last Thursday, Moorhead Street address from 4:47 p.m. to 6:12 p.m. Then South End, a block from Sotto Voce, from 6:38 p.m. to 10:04 p.m. The Thursday before, Moorhead Street from 5:03 p.m. South End from 6:45 p.m. The Thursday before that, same pattern, different minute stamps, same addresses. I scrolled back through 6 weeks of Thursdays. The pattern repeated with the regularity of a temperature curve on a brisket cook. Moorhead Street first, always between 4:30 and 5. Then South End, always by 7. Home, by 10 or 10:30. Moorhead Street, where the apartments were, where someone had a lease. My thumb hovered over the screen. The stainless steel prep table was cold under my elbows. I closed the app and opened the phone's browser. Found the number for First Baptist Church of Dilworth. Good afternoon, First Baptist. This is Karen. Karen, this is Silas Underwood. I was hoping to speak with Pastor Ridley if he's available. A click, a hold tone, then the pastor's voice. Warm, unhurried. The voice of a man who counseled other people's problems and slept well at night. Silas, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? Pastor, I wanted to confirm something about the Valentine's couple dinner. Margot mentioned she signed us up, but I can't find the RSVP anywhere. Just wanted to make sure we're on the list. Let me pull that up, he said. Papers shuffled on his end. I heard him humming as he scanned. Underwood, Underwood. But I don't see you here, Silas. Margot hasn't submitted an RSVP for the Valentine's dinner. She hasn't. No, sir. Would you like me to add you both? That's all right, I said. I must have misunderstood. I appreciate your time, Pastor. Of course, hope to see you Sunday. I hung up and set the phone face down on the stainless steel prep table. Valentine's Day, she told me she'd be at the church couple's dinner. The pastor had no record of her. She'd be at table 9, reservation under Kessler, 7:30 with Trent. I drove home. The house was quiet. Josie was at a friend's house. Theo was at an after-school program until 5. I walked through the living room past the 11 scrapbooks on their shelf, past the floors I'd sanded on my knees, past the kitchen I'd renovated with my own hands, out to the screened-in porch. I sat in the chair I always sat in. The brisket journal was on the side table, same place I'd left it after the last competition. I picked it up and held it in my lap. 14 years, 5,000 nights. The plate in the microwave, the kiss on the cheek, the same exchange at the door. How was it? Good. Long. 5,000 times, and I'd never questioned whether the answer was real. Josie telling me Mommy was at book club with the rehearsed ease of a child who'd been trained to deliver lines. Theo asking why Mommy whispers on the phone. The 2 hairstyles, the bun and the curls, 2 women sharing one body. The hand on Trent's arm at the holiday party, 2 seconds too long, the fingers curling against the fabric. I could drive to Moorhead Street right now. I could find the apartment. I could pound on the door and tear apart whatever they'd built with my money and my time. I could call Margot and say the 7 words, "I know about you and Trent." I could burn down 14 years in 30 seconds. The rage sat in my chest like a hot coal behind the ribs. I felt it every time I breathed. But rage is a temperature spike. Open the lid when the smoker flares, and all I'd get is burnt meat and wasted time. 14 years of evidence erased in one confrontation. One phone call that would give her time to delete texts, close accounts, coordinate stories with Trent, call her lawyer before I had mine. I opened the Brisket journal to a blank page, picked up the pen clipped to the spine. I wrote the date. Then Celine Archambault confirmed Margot and Trent Hollander, Table 9, Sotto, Voce, every Thursday, 2 years. Reservation name, Kessler. Valentine's Day reservation, 7:30 p.m. Below that, family tracking app. Thursday pattern, Moorhead Street address, 4,035 p.m. South End, 6,037 p.m. Every Thursday, 6+ weeks confirmed. Below that, Pastor Ridley confirmed no RSVP for Valentine's couples dinner. Margot told me she'd be there. I wrote for 10 minutes. Dates, times, locations, names, everything I'd noticed over months. The perfume, the curls, Josie's cover stories, Trent's closed door, his second monitor angled away from the glass, the secondary account for vendor advances. Every detail I'd filed away and explained away and forgiven in advance because patience was supposed to be the answer. Patience was still the answer, just not the kind I'd been practicing. I had 3 weeks until Valentine's Day. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of the same exchange at the door, the same kiss on the cheek, the same plate in the microwave. 3 weeks of eating her answers like food. I'd built a business from nothing using handshakes and relationships. 12 years of hospitality connections across Charlotte. Maîtres who owed me favors. Concierges who remembered my name. Sommeliers who'd shared my bourbon on their nights off. A network of people who worked the floors and the desks and the lobbies of every restaurant and hotel in the city. That network was about to serve a different purpose. I closed the journal and picked up my phone. Scrolled to my brother's number. Wade Underwood, 4 years older, family law attorney in Raleigh, the responsible one. The one who planned before he moved. I dialed. "Hey, little brother," Wade said. "Everything okay? I need a family law attorney," I said. "Not a brother. An attorney." The line went quiet. I heard him set something down. A door closed on his end. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning. Don't skip anything." I told him. Celine's call, the reservation name, the tracking data, the pastor's confirmation, 2 years of Thursdays at the table where I proposed. Wade didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was silent for 5 seconds. Then the brother was gone and the attorney was there. North Carolina recognizes alienation of affection and criminal conversation as civil claims, he said. Adultery bars alimony. If you can document the affair and any financial misconduct, you won't just win the divorce. You'll take everything. "I need the case airtight," I said. "Then you touch nothing. You confront no one. You change no routines. For 3 weeks, you are the same husband, the same partner, the same father. Nothing shifts. Nothing tips. You go home and you kiss her on the cheek and you eat the plate she left in the microwave, and you do not let one word, one look, one change in your breathing give her a reason to check her phone or call a lawyer. I understand, I said. 3 weeks, Silas. Can you do that? I've been doing it for months. After we hung up, I closed the journal and set it back on the side table. The ceiling fan turned above me. February. Air came through the screens, cool but not cold. The kind of evening where you could sit on a porch without a jacket if you didn't mind the chill. Through the porch doorway, I could see the living room. The 11 scrapbooks on the shelf I'd built. The hardwood floors I'd sanded on my knees. The hallway where Margot's perfume lingered on Thursday nights. The clock on the kitchen wall read 4:50. I grabbed my keys and drove to pick up Theo from his after-school program. He climbed into the back seat with his backpack and a library book about black holes. "Can we read this one tonight, Daddy?" "We can, buddy." At 8 o'clock, I sat on the screened-in porch with Theo in the chair beside me. Same chair, same porch, same ceiling fan. The journal was 6 inches from my elbow. The blank pages after my notes waiting for 3 weeks of entries. I opened to Chapter 4, Event Horizons, the point past which nothing escapes. My voice didn't change. My hands didn't shake. My son leaned against my arm and listened to facts about gravitational collapse, and I read each sentence the way I always read, steady and clear. The same father, the same voice, the same ritual. Theo's eyes got heavy by page 9. I carried him to bed, pulled the covers to his chin, and stood in the hallway. Margot's car pulled into the driveway. The front door opened, keys on the hook, footsteps in the kitchen. "How was it?" she asked from the other room. "Good," I said. "Long." I drove 2.5 hours to Raleigh on a Saturday morning. Told Margot I was scouting a new vendor for pulled pork supplies in Durham. She didn't ask which vendor, didn't ask when I'd be back. She was arranging photos in scrapbook number 11 when I left, a glue stick in one hand and a picture of Theo's school science fair in the other. Wade's office sat on Hillsborough Street in a converted brick row house between a used bookstore and a Thai restaurant. The sign on the door read Underwood Family Law in gold letters that needed repainting. Inside, the conference room had a table meant for mediations, 6 chairs, a water pitcher nobody ever filled, and a window overlooking a parking lot. The baseboard heater ticked against the wall, and the whole room smelled like old paper and radiator dust. I laid everything on that table. The brisket journal with my notes. Screenshots of the tracking data printed at a FedEx in Burlington on the drive up so no one in Charlotte would see. Celine's contact information. The pastor's confirmation. Wade sat across from me with his reading glasses on and a yellow legal pad. He didn't touch the documents at first. He read my notes, then read them again, then set the journal down and removed his glasses. "How long have you suspected?" he asked. "Months, maybe longer. But you didn't act. I didn't have proof." Put the glasses back on and picked up the tracking data printouts. Studied the Thursday patterns, the repeated Moorhead Street address, the consistent South End coordinates near Sotto Voce. "This is good," he said. "This is a start. But we need more than location data and a restaurant employee's word. We need financial documentation. If Trent's been funding this with company money, that changes everything." He explained it in the same measured voice he used for clients. North Carolina still allowed alienation of affection and criminal conversation suits, civil claims against the third party who destroyed a marriage. Adultery was a bar to alimony. If we could prove the affair and tie it to financial misconduct, Margot's position in the divorce would collapse. She gets nothing? I asked. Wade shook his head. She gets what's fair, but alimony is off the table if adultery is proven. And if Trent used company money, that's a separate matter. Criminal, not just civil. He opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. Renata Voss. Forensic accounting. Charlotte Renata Voss, he said, 51 years old. Testified in 3 cases I know of. Cross-examination didn't put a scratch on her. If there's money moving where it shouldn't be, she'll trace every dollar to its destination. I took the card and put it in my shirt pocket. What do I do in the meantime? I asked. Wade leaned forward. Nothing changes. You go home. You eat dinner with your family. You work with Trent like everything is normal. You do not confront. You do not hint. You do not change a single pattern. Let us build the case while you hold the line. I drove home that afternoon and arrived in time to read to Theo. Chapter 5. Neutron Stars. Margot was in the living room with the scrapbook open on her lap. She looked up when I came through the door. Find a good vendor? She asked. Nothing worth switching for, I said. She went back to her photographs. I went to the porch. The next 2 weeks ran on 2 burners, one visible, one underneath. The visible burner was the life Margot saw, the husband who loaded vans at dawn and came home smelling like roasted chicken and lemon zest. The father who coached Saturday soccer and checked homework. The business partner who met Trent at the kitchen every morning and discussed quarterly projections over coffee that tasted the same as it always had. The other burner ran underground. I started with the hospitality network. 12 years of relationships built one handshake at a time. I made calls during my lunch break, sitting in my truck in the parking lot behind the commercial kitchen with the engine off and the windows cracked. The first call went to Marcus Delaney, a concierge I'd known since my Sotto days, who now worked the front desk at the Valentine Hotel and Lodge in South Charlotte. Marcus owed me nothing but hospitality. People remember the managers who learned their names and used them. Marcus, it's Silas Underwood. I need a favor, and I need your discretion. He didn't hesitate. What do you need? A guest named Trent Hollander. He may have booked stays over the past few years. Can you check your records? Marcus called back 2 hours later. 17 stays over 4 years. Corner suites, everyone. Charged to a visa ending in 4418. The card was linked to a business account under Underwood and Hollander Catering, LLC. 17 corner suites at Valentine rates. That was north of $40,000. Charged to my company. I wrote the number in the Brisket Journal. 17 stays. Visa 4418. Business account. The second call went to Philippe Renaud, a sommelier at a wine bar in Dilworth, where Charlotte's restaurant crowd gathered on slow nights. Philippe had poured for me on 100 Tuesday evenings. I asked if he remembered a woman matching Margot's description, dining with a tall man with a golf tan. Philippe remembered. The blonde with the gold earrings, he said. They came in maybe 6-7 times over the past year. She ordered the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo every time. He always had the Barolo. They sat in the back corner. He paused. She called him honey once, Philippe said. I remember because it seemed practiced. The third call was to Celine. I need it in writing, I told her. Everything you told me on the phone. Dates you can confirm. The reservation name, the table number, all of it. A sworn statement, if you're willing. Celine didn't hesitate. I'll have it to your brother's office by Friday. Her statement arrived on Thursday. 4 pages, single-spaced. Every Thursday for 2 years. Table 9, Kessler. She included specific dates when she'd personally seated them, wines ordered, approximate arrival and departure times. The document read like a maitre d's reservation log, because that's what it was. While I worked the phones, Renata Voss worked the numbers. Wade filed an emergency motion, citing imminent risk of evidence destruction and my equal ownership rights in the catering company. The court order gave Renata access to Trent's password-protected laptop in the glassed-in office. She arrived at the kitchen on a Tuesday morning while Trent was at a client meeting. I let her in myself, unlocked his office door with the master key I'd never used, and watched her sit at his desk, open the laptop with the court-ordered password reset, and begin. She worked for 6 hours that first day, came back Wednesday, came back Thursday. I brought her coffee each morning. She accepted it without looking up from the screen. On Friday, she called Wade. Wade called me. Silas, he said, you need to come to Raleigh tomorrow. Bring nothing. Tell no one. I drove up Saturday morning. Same route, same excuse about vendor research. This time, Margot was getting her hair done. The daytime version, the bun appointment. Renata was in Wade's conference room with the table covered in printouts. Spreadsheets highlighted in yellow and red, bank statements with transactions circled. A timeline pinned to a corkboard Wade must have brought from the closet. She looked up when I walked in. Wire-rimmed glasses. No smile. No sympathy. Just numbers. Sit down, she said. I sat. The secondary account your partner opened for vendor advances was never used for vendor advances, she began. Over 6 years, approximately $340,000 was diverted from your company's primary revenue into this account. The amounts ranged from $500 to $3,000 per event, skimmed from billing reconciliations. Small enough that quarterly reporting wouldn't flag them. Large enough that over 72 months, they add up. She turned a spreadsheet toward me. Rows and rows of transactions, each one highlighted, each one dated, each one traceable. Where did it go? I asked. She flipped to the next page. Hotel charges at the Valentine. Monthly rent payments of $2,200 to a property management company on Moorhead Street. Purchases at 3 jewelry stores in South Park. And recurring payments to a Visa credit card issued in the name of Margot Kessler. Not Margot Underwood, Margot Kessler. I looked at the credit card statements Renata had obtained through the discovery order. Lingerie, weekend bags, hair treatments, restaurant charges at Sotto Voce. Every purchase mapped to the timeline of the affair. Renata pulled out a document from the bottom of her stack. Moorhead Street apartment lease. Unit 306. 2 bedrooms. Co-tenants listed on the signature page, Margot Underwood and Trent Hollander. Their names in ink, side by side. Renewed annually for 3 years. I stared at the signatures. My wife's handwriting. My business partner's. "There's more," Renata said. She turned to a set of delivery receipts and credit card charges linked to a name I hadn't expected. Lorraine Kessler, Margot's mother. 6 purchases at a mid-century modern furniture store in South End, totaling $14,200, all delivered to the Moorhead Street address. Plus recurring grocery charges at the Harris Teeter 2 blocks from the apartment. She wasn't just visiting. She was setting up house. Lorraine, the woman who sat at my Thanksgiving table eating turkey I'd brined for 3 days, measuring me against her ex-husband and finding the same deficiencies. She'd been furnishing their apartment with mid-century modern pieces and stocking the kitchen like a real home while I passed her the cranberry sauce and called her ma'am. Renata turned to the last section of her documents. A wire transfer record, $28,000 from the secondary business account to an escrow account held by a real estate attorney. A down payment, she said, on a 2-bedroom condo in South End. The purchase agreement names both of them as buyers. The transfer was initiated 3 months ago. They were buying a home together, with my money. While Margot slept in the bed I'd assembled, in the house I'd renovated, under the roof I'd maintained for 14 years. Wade opened his own folder. "And there's one more thing." He slid a document across the table. A divorce complaint, drafted 6 months earlier by an attorney in Charlotte I'd never heard of. Petitioner, Margot Underwood. The filing sought primary custody of Josie and Theo, possession of the Dilworth residence, spousal support, and equitable distribution of all marital assets, including 50% of Underwood and Hollander catering. Attached to the draft was a scanned document. 23 pages of Margot's handwriting, photographed and emailed to Trent. Each page documented my absence. Silas left at 5 a.m., returned at 11 p.m. Silas missed Theo's parent-teacher conference. Silas spent Saturday at a BBQ competition instead of attending Josie's recital. She was building a case, Wade said, an abandoned wife narrative. Her attorney advised her to keep the journal for at least 6 months before filing. I picked up the printout and read 5 entries. The Saturday I drove to Durham for a 200-person corporate gala, the one that paid for Josie's braces, she'd logged as Silas absent all day, no explanation given. The Tuesday, I stayed late because a walk-in cooler failed and I had to transfer $4,000 worth of product before it spoiled. She'd written, "Silas chose work over family dinner again. Every sacrifice rewritten as evidence. Every 60-hour week recast as proof she'd been left alone." I set the pages down. "How do we counter this?" I said. Wade tapped the stack of Renata's documents. "We already have. 2 years of documented adultery bars alimony under North Carolina law. The embezzlement is a felony. The apartment lease, the credit card, the condo down payment all prove coordinated financial fraud. I've drafted counter motions that neutralize every claim in her filing. We file the morning after you make your move." Renata's final report came to 47 pages. Highlighted spreadsheets, annotated bank statements, a timeline that overlaid every financial transaction against Celine's reservation records showing money flowing out of the company and into hotels and apartments on the same dates Margot and Trent were seated at table 9. I spent that evening in Wade's conference room organizing a condensed version into a manila folder, tabbed dividers, 5 sections, the same format I'd used for restaurant training manuals at Sotto Voce. Tab 1, Celine's statement, 2 years of Thursdays. Tab 2, the Moorhead street lease, both signatures circled in red. Tab 3, Renata's financial summary, $340,000 diverted. Tab 4, Valentine hotel receipts, 17 stays. Tab 5, the wire transfer, $28,000, the condo. I closed the folder and pressed the metal clasp flat. One more thing, I told Wade. Picked up my phone and called Celine. Celine, I need you to do something for me. The Valentine's reservation under Kessler. Table 9. Transfer it to my name. Don't notify the original party. She was quiet for a moment. Consider it done, she said. I hung up and set the folder on the table. 5 tabs, 47 pages behind them. 3 weeks of silence. Every detail accounted for. Wade watched me from across the conference room. His reading glasses sat on the legal pad covered in notes. You ready for this? He asked. I ran my thumb along the folder's edge. Same brown paper, same metal clasp. Same kind of folder I'd carried into my first day at Sotto Voce, holding a floor plan and a wine list, and the belief that preparation was the difference between a good night and a disaster. The table is mine. Valentine's Day. 6:14 p.m. Margot stood in the hallway mirror adjusting her gold earrings, the ones Lorraine gave her for her 30th birthday. Loose curls past her shoulders, dark lipstick, the evening version. She turned and walked to the living room, where Josie sat cross-legged on the floor with her math textbook, and Theo lay on the rug reading about solar systems. I'll be back late, she said, kissing each of them on the head. Be good for Grandma. Josie didn't look up, even, okay, Mom? Margot smiled. The warm one, the one that made you feel included. I watched from the kitchen doorway, drying a pan I'd already dried twice. She turned to me. The smile held, Don't wait up, honey. Pastor Ridley's dinners always run long. Enjoy it, I said. She picked up her clutch from the table by the door, checked her phone, and left. The door closed behind her. Perfume stayed. I set the pan down and counted to 60. Through the front window, I watched her taillights turn left on East Park, heading toward South End, not toward First Baptist. She'd never even RSVP'd. Lorraine Kessler had pulled into the driveway at 5:50 in her silver Camry. She came through the front door without knocking, the way she always did, as if the house already belonged to someone other than me. Silas, she said by way of greeting. Her eyes swept the kitchen. The assessment took 2 seconds. Lorraine, I appreciate you coming on short notice. She set her purse on the counter. Margot said the church dinner might run late. It might, I said. I've got a catering emergency. Client moved their timeline up. On Valentine's Day, her voice carried the same thin disdain she brought to Thanksgiving, the same audit in her eyes. Events don't wait for holidays, I said. She looked at me the way she always looked at me, like a woman calculating what her daughter could have had instead. I went upstairs, changed out of my work clothes. The dark Henley hung in the closet where I'd put it 3 days ago. Pulled it on, pushed the sleeves to my forearms, and stepped into the polished leather boots I'd bought for restaurant events and never worn to a catering job. In the bathroom mirror, a man looked back at me who didn't resemble the one who'd loaded vans at 5 that morning. This was the Sotto Voce version, the manager who commanded dining rooms. I went back downstairs. Josie and Theo were in the living room with Lorraine, who had already turned on a cooking competition show. "I'll be back in a couple hours," I said, kissed Theo's head, squeezed Josie's shoulder. Lorraine didn't look up from the television. The manila folder sat on the passenger seat of my truck. 5 tabbed dividers. 47 pages of evidence behind them. 3 weeks of silence compressed into brown paper and a metal clasp. I pulled out of the driveway at 6:15. The February sky was the color of old steel, and the streetlights on East Park had already kicked on, casting yellow pools on the sidewalks. I called Wade. He picked up on the first ring. "I'm leaving now," I said. "I'm already here," Wade said. "Parked on Bland Street, half a block south. Counterfiling goes to the Mecklenburg County Courthouse at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Everything's ready. Anything changes, you call me," I said. "Nothing's going to change," he said. "Go do what you need to do." I hung up and drove south toward the restaurant. Sotto Voce sat on a corner in South End, where 2 brick buildings met at an angle, the entrance marked by a black awning and warm light spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows. I'd driven past it 100 times since leaving. Never went in. Tonight, the sidewalk tables were empty in the February chill, but inside, every seat was taken. Valentine's night, the biggest reservation night of the year. Parked on the street and sat for 30 seconds. The folder on the seat beside me, the engine ticking as it cooled. I picked up the folder and got out. The front door was the same mahogany I'd polished every Monday morning for 4 years. The brass handle had a new patina, but the same weight. I pulled it open and stepped inside. The wine cellar glowed beneath the glass floor panel. Hundreds of bottles in temperature-controlled racks, visible through the panel, I used to keep spotless with glass cleaner and a microfiber cloth every night before service. I walked across it without looking down. The dining room opened up, exposed brick, candlelight on every table, the hum of conversation and silverware and low Italian strings through the speakers, garlic and fresh bread and seared meat from the open kitchen. Every table full, couples leaning toward each other in the amber light. Bartender I'd trained 12 years ago glanced up from the rail and froze. His hand stopped mid-pour. I gave him a nod and kept walking. A server, carrying 2 plates of osso buco, saw me and nearly broke stride. She recovered, delivered the plates, then turned to watch me cross the floor. Celine stood at the maître d'stand near the entrance to the main dining room, 38 years old, the woman I'd trained when she couldn't tell a Barolo from a Barbaresco. She wore a black dress and her hair pulled back tight. When our eyes met, she gave me one nod, a single movement, everything I needed to know in the angle of a chin. They're seated, table 9, right where they always are. I adjusted the folder under my arm and walked into the main dining room. The banquette curved against the far wall. Leather, the color of dark chocolate, a view of the open kitchen where flames jumped behind the pass. The same table where I'd sat across from Margot on our first date 14 years ago and watched her ask about tannin structure with the confidence of a woman who'd done her homework. Now she sat in the same spot, loose curls catching the candlelight, gold earrings, the angular elegance she saved for someone other than me. Her wine glass was half empty, bottle of Montepulciano between them. Trent sat beside her, golf tan, sport coat, the easy lean of a man who'd never worked a kitchen shift or loaded a van at dawn. He was mid-sentence, one hand gesturing the way he did when performing, the other resting on the table near Margot's fingers. I crossed the remaining 15 feet without hurrying, the same pace I used to walk the floor at Sotto Voce. No rush, no hesitation, every step placed like it belonged to someone who owned the room. I pulled out the chair across from them and placed the folder on the white tablecloth. Margot saw me first. The color left her face the way heat leaves a plate set on cold marble. Her lips parted, no sound. Her right hand rose to the scar above her left eyebrow and pressed against it. Trent turned. His face cycled through 3 expressions in 2 seconds: surprise, then the automatic smile, then something he tried to shape into casual warmth. "Silas, buddy," he said. He started to stand, hand already lifting toward my shoulder. "What are you doing here?" "Sit down." 2 words, below the volume of the restaurant's ambient strings. But something in them landed, because Trent sat. The metal clasp caught the candlelight. Neither of them looked at the folder, they looked at me. Margot's hand stayed pressed against the scar. Trent's smile was gone. I opened the folder to the first tab. This is a written statement from Celine Archambault, the maitre d'. She documents every Thursday night for the past 2 years at this table. Reservation under the name Kessler. Your maiden name, Margot. Dates, times, wines ordered, arrival and departure records. I turned the statement so they could read it and let it sit for 5 seconds. Margot's eyes moved across the page. Her breath caught. I turned to the next divider. This is the lease agreement for a 2-bedroom apartment at 4217 Moorhead Street, Unit 36. Co-tenants listed Margot Underwood and Trent Hollander. Renewed annually for 3 years. I'd circled both signatures in red. Margot's hand dropped from the scar, reached toward the document, then pulled back. Trent shifted in his seat, the leather creaking beneath him. "Silas, this isn't," Trent started. I turned to the third tab. Forensic Accounting Summary prepared by Renata Voss. It documents $340,000 diverted from Underwood and Hollander catering over 6 years through a secondary account you opened under the company's EIN, amounts ranging from $500 to $3,000 per event. Routed to hotels, the Moorhead Street apartment, jewelry stores, and a credit card in Margot's maiden name. I spread the spreadsheets across the tablecloth. Yellow highlights, red circles. 6 years of theft rendered in rows and columns and ink. Trent's tan had gone the color of old paper. His jaw worked, but nothing came out. That account was for, he started. I turned to the 4th tab without looking at him. 17 stays at the Valentine Hotel over 4 years. Corner suites. all charged to a Visa linked to the company's secondary account. I fanned the hotel receipts across the white linen. Dates, room numbers, charges, each one a night he'd spent in a bed paid for with money I'd earned. Margot's composure broke. Not a scream, not tears. Her face crumpled inward, the way a souffle collapses when you open the oven door too early. Her hand went back to the scar and stayed there, pressed so hard the skin around her fingers went white. I turned to the 5th tab. My voice stayed where it had been, below the music, below the conversation at surrounding tables, a wire transfer of $28,000 from the company's secondary account to an escrow account held by a real estate attorney. A down payment on a condo in South End that you and Trent planned to purchase together. After the divorce you filed against me 6 months ago, I let the document sit on the table. Margot's lips moved. No words came out. Her hand shook against the scar. Trent's grip on the table edge had turned his knuckles white. His hands trembled in the candlelight. I closed the folder, pressed the metal clasp flat. The same gesture I'd made in Wade's conference room. The same brown paper. The same weight. My brother Wade has filed counter-motions to Margot's divorce complaint. A civil suit against you, Trent, for alienation of affection under North Carolina law. And the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office will receive the embezzlement evidence tomorrow morning. $340,000 exceeds the felony threshold. I pushed back the chair and stood, picked up the folder. I looked at both of them one more time. Margot hadn't moved. Her curls hung around a face I didn't recognize anymore. Trent's hands still shook against the table's edge, the sport coat bunched at his shoulders. I appreciate your time. Neither of them moved. I turned and walked toward the entrance, past the tables full of couples sharing wine and candlelight, past the server with the osso buco who stepped aside without a word, past the bartender who was watching me now with something that looked like recognition of what had just happened, past Celine at the maitre d' stand. She met my eyes as I passed. Neither of us spoke, pushed open the mahogany door, and stepped into the February night. The cold hit my face and my jaw unclenched for the first time in 20 minutes. Bland street stretched ahead, lit by street lamps and the glow from restaurant windows. Wade's car was parked half a block south, his headlights off, the counterfiling paperwork stacked on his passenger seat, ready for the courthouse at dawn. I walked to my truck, set the folder on the seat, and started the engine. The dashboard clock read 8:12. The whole thing had taken less than 20 minutes. Behind me, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sotto Voce, Table 9 was visible from the street. Margot sat in the same position I'd left her, hand on the scar. Trent's head was bowed, his hands flat on the tablecloth beside the wine. The candle between them still burned. The Montepulciano bottle stood untouched. I put the truck in gear and drove north toward Dilworth, toward my house, toward my children. The February air came through the cracked window, and I breathed it in. Clean, cold. The streetlights on East Park turned green ahead of me, one after another, all the way home. Wade filed the counter-motions and the alienation of affection civil suit against Trent at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse at 8:07 the next morning. I know the time because he texted me a photo of the filing stamp. February 15th, 8:07 a.m., the ink still wet on the clerk's date stamp. By 9:30, Margot's attorney received the counterfiling. By 10, he called Wade's office. By noon, the conversation had shifted from Margot's carefully constructed narrative of an abandoned wife to something her attorney hadn't prepared for. Wade told me the call lasted 11 minutes. My client's position requires significant reassessment, the attorney said. I didn't need a translator. Margot's journal, the one she'd kept for 6 months at her attorney's instruction, documenting every late night, every missed dinner, every Saturday I spent at a competition or a corporate event instead of home, had been the foundation of her case. 23 pages of my absences rewritten as proof of abandonment. None of it mattered now. Under North Carolina law, a spouse who committed marital misconduct, specifically adultery, is barred from receiving alimony. Not reduced, not adjusted, barred. 2 years of a documented affair didn't just weaken her position. It erased the financial safety net she'd spent 6 months engineering. The journal entries that were supposed to make me look like a negligent husband now read like the schedule of a man who worked 60-hour weeks to support a family his wife was dismantling. The Saturday at the BBQ competition, she logged as Silas absent all day, no explanation given, was the same Saturday her tracking data showed her at the Moorhead Street apartment from 2 p.m. to 6. The Tuesday she wrote, Silas chose work over family dinner again, was the same Tuesday. Celine's record showed a Kessler reservation at table 9. Entry after entry in her journal had a counter-entry in Renata's timeline. Every documented absence had a corresponding affair rendezvous. She'd kept a record of my sacrifices. Renata kept a record of what Margot was doing while I made them. Pastor Amos Ridley, the minister at First Baptist Church of Dilworth, called me 2 days after Valentine's. I picked up because I owed him that. He'd been a good pastor to our family, even if Margot had been using his congregation as a prop. Silas, he said, his voice carried the weight of a man who'd been sitting with difficult truths. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything, Pastor. I do. Margot came to me 8 months ago asking to increase her involvement with the church. Volunteering, committees, fellowship. I thought she was deepening her faith. He paused. I understand now that she was building a character reference. The pastor had checked his records after my phone call about the Valentine's dinner. No RSVP. Then he'd started reviewing Margot's pattern of involvement. The timing, the visibility, the way she positioned herself at every event where church leadership would notice her devotion. I've removed her from the Women's Fellowship Committee and the Food Bank Coordination, he said, quietly. I don't believe in public punishment, but the congregation is small, Silas. People talk. They did talk. First Baptist Church of Dilworth had 200 members, and within 2 weeks, the core group of women Margot had cultivated as social armor knew the scope of what she'd done. Not from me, not from Wade. From the same gossip network Margot had spent a year embedding herself in. The same women who commented goals and so beautiful on her Instagram posts now passed different words across the fellowship hall. The church didn't excommunicate her. They did something worse. They stopped calling. The DA's office moved on the embezzlement evidence the same week. Wade had coordinated the handoff with Patricia Sotto, and assistant district attorney in her late 40s who'd built her career on white-collar prosecutions in Mecklenburg County. Renata's 47-page report landed on her desk like a gift. $340,000 diverted over 6 years. North Carolina criminal statute, embezzlement exceeding $100,000, is a Class C felony. Maximum sentence of 231 months. Trent's family hired a defense attorney from a firm on South Tryon Street that charged more per hour than I billed for a weekend wedding. Old Charlotte money paying Old Charlotte rates. But forensic accounting doesn't care about billable hours. The numbers were the numbers. Every transaction traced, every dollar documented, every receipt cross-referenced against Celine's reservation log and the apartment lease and the hotel stays. His father made phone calls to judges, to county officials, to men who played golf at Quail Hollow on Wednesday afternoons. The kind of calls that move zoning permits and postpone inspections. None of it moved the spreadsheets. Trent was arraigned on a Tuesday. I wasn't there. I was at the commercial kitchen loading a van for a Henderson and Pratt corporate luncheon. Wade told me about it that evening over the phone. He described Trent's face as the charges were read. The golf tan was gone. The catering company dissolved by March. On paper, it was a mutual decision. In practice, there was nothing left to share. Trent couldn't operate a business while facing felony charges, and I wasn't going to carry a partner who'd stolen $340,000 from the kitchen I'd built. The walk-in coolers I'd stocked every morning for 12 years sat empty. The loading dock where I'd backed in catering vans before sunrise went quiet. What surprised me was how fast the phone started ringing. The first call came from Henderson and Pratt, the law firm whose Christmas party I'd catered for 7 years straight. The managing partner's assistant called on a Monday morning. Mr. Henderson wants to confirm that the firm's spring gala is still on your calendar, she said. He specifically requested you, not the company, you. I wrote down the date. Same legal pad I used for event planning. Same handwriting. The second call was from Dr. Miriam Cho's pediatric practice, whose office manager had become a personal friend after 5 years of annual staff appreciation dinners. Same message, different words. By the end of March, every client that mattered had reached out. Charlotte law firms, medical practices, country clubs in Mecklenburg County. The $1.2 million in annual revenue had been booked under Underwood and Hollander. But every handshake, every menu tasting, every late-night adjustment when a bride changed her mind about the salmon 3 days before the wedding, that was mine. They knew it. I knew it. Trent had always known it. The custody evaluation began in April. The Mecklenburg County Family Courthouse smelled like floor wax and recycled air. Fluorescent lights hummed in the hallways where parents sat on wooden benches waiting for their names to be called. A court-appointed evaluator named Dr. Sandra Kinsey spent 3 weeks interviewing both parties, reviewing documentation, and speaking with witnesses. Wade had prepared a filing that centered on one argument: Margot's sustained pattern of using her children as instruments of deception demonstrated behavior incompatible with primary custody. He presented the evidence in stages. Josie's role as an unwitting alibi, trained over months to deliver cover stories with the ease of a weather report. Tell Daddy I'm at book club. Both children left with Lorraine on Thursday evenings, while Margot drove to Moorhead Street, then to South End. Theo's questions, the ones a 7-year-old shouldn't have to ask. Why does Mommy whisper on the phone? Why does Mommy smile different? Dr. Kinsey interviewed Josie in a room with soft chairs and a box of colored pencils. I wasn't present for the interview, but Wade received the evaluator's report. Josie had been covering for her mother since she was 9 years old. 2 years of Thursday lies delivered on command, without understanding what she was protecting. The evaluator's conclusion filled 3 pages. The relevant sentence was 1 line. The mother's documented pattern of involving the minor child in deception for the purpose of concealing an extramarital affair raises concerns about judgment and prioritization of parental responsibility. The court granted me full custody of Josie and Theo. Margot's attorney fought it. He argued Margot was the primary caregiver, the one who packed lunches and drove carpool and attended parent-teacher conferences. All true. Also true, she did those things between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., then handed the children to her mother and drove to an apartment she shared with the man who was stealing from their father. During depositions, Lorraine Kessler's involvement surfaced in full. The furniture purchases at the South End store. The grocery runs to the Harris Teeter, 2 blocks from the Moorhead Street apartment. The coaching on Margot's divorce journal, which entries to include, which absences to document, how to frame the narrative of abandonment. Lorraine hadn't just known about the affair. She'd been its logistics coordinator. Wade asked her directly in the deposition, "Mrs. Kessler, did you help your daughter furnish the apartment at 4217 Moorhead Street?" Lorraine's attorney objected. Lorraine answered anyway. A mother supports her daughter. Did that support include advising her to document her husband's work schedule for use in divorce proceedings? Lorraine pressed her lips together. The same thin line I'd seen across my Thanksgiving table over turkey I'd brined for 3 days. "Love is lovely," she said, "but security is survival." The court transcript recorded the words, the same phrase she'd spoken at my dining table. The philosophy that had driven every calculation, every Thursday lie, every scrapbook page, pasted with glue and deception. The Moorhead Street lease terminated in May. The landlord relisted Unit 36 within a week. The $28,000 condo escrow deposit was frozen by court order pending the resolution of criminal proceedings. The credit card in Margot's maiden name was canceled. The secondary business account was closed, its remaining balance transferred to a restitution fund. Trent and Margot didn't survive the exposure. Whatever they'd built in those Thursday dinners and corner suites, it required darkness to hold its shape. Take away the secrecy and the stolen money, and the shared apartment, and the Valentine's reservations under someone else's name. And what remained was 2 people who'd only ever been comfortable together in hiding. When the lights came on, they had nothing to say to each other. Trent's family issued a statement through their attorney. Something about privacy and due process. His father stopped returning calls. His membership at Quail Hollow, the golf club Margot once held up as evidence of the life she deserved, suspended his privileges pending the outcome of the criminal case. The social currency she'd envied was worthless now. Margot moved to Huntersville in June, into Lorraine's 2-bedroom ranch house on a street lined with Bradford pears and vinyl siding. The same house Lorraine had been paying a mortgage on since the divorce that defined her entire worldview. The same house Margot left at 18, swearing she'd never come back. She came back. I heard about it from Wade, who heard it from Margot's attorney during a routine communication about custody scheduling. She's staying with her mother temporarily, the attorney said. I didn't respond. There was nothing to add. Margot tried to take the house I rebuilt room by room with my own hands. She lost her home and moved into her mother's spare bedroom. Trent tried to steal $340,000 from the business I built handshake by handshake. He faced a felony that could put him away for years. They used my company's money to rent an apartment, book hotel suites, and put a deposit on a condo they'd never live in. The apartment was gone. The hotels were receipts in an evidence file. The deposit was frozen. Margot's 11 scrapbooks sat on the shelf I'd built into the living room wall. Leather-bound, acid-free, Pinterest-perfect documentation of birthday parties and beach vacations and Christmas mornings. Every page, a performance. Every layout, a fiction maintained with glue sticks and good lighting, while the actual family was being hollowed out from the inside. The scrapbooks stayed on the shelf. Josie would want them someday. The happy memories belonged to her, even the staged ones. If my journey speaks to you, tap like and comment your rating from 1 to 10. Your opinion matters to me. 6 months later, August. Dusk settling over Dilworth. I sat on the screened-in porch with my kids. The ceiling fan I'd wired myself turned above us, pushing warm air through the screens into the yard where lightning bugs had started their shift. Cicadas droned from the oak trees on East Park. A dog barking 2 houses down. Someone's sprinkler hitting the sidewalk. A car door closing up the street. Josie sat cross-legged in the chair beside me, one of the scrapbooks open across her knees. Volume 3, The Wrightsville Beach Trip. Theo buried my legs in sand on page 7 of that one. She turned the pages with care, studying each layout the way her mother used to arrange them, except Josie was looking at them for what they were. Memories, hers. I'd given her all 11 volumes in June. Set them on her bed with no explanation beyond, "These belong to you." She didn't ask why. She understood more than I wanted her to. Theo sat on my other side, reading a library book about Saturn's rings. Legs tucked under him, brown eyes tracking the page. He hadn't asked a quiet question in months. No more wondering why Mommy whispered on the phone. No more studying my face for signs of something wrong. He read his book and leaned against my arm, and that was enough. The brisket journal sat on the side table where it always sat, back to its original purpose. Last entry, a competition in Concord 3 weeks ago where I'd tried a new post oak and peckin blend on a 12-pound Packer brisket. Bark set at hour 6. Stall hit at 102 degrees. I wrapped at hour 9, 4th place, 1 ribbon away from the wall. This weekend I'd try again. The smoker stood in the backyard, visible through the screen, matte black steel catching the last of the daylight. I'd repainted the lettering last Tuesday night after the kids went to bed. White block letters on the firebox. Low and Slow Justice. Fresh coat, same name. Underwood Catering. I'd registered the name the week after the old company dissolved. No Hollander, No glassed-in office. No secondary account. Just me, the commercial kitchen, and every client who'd called back in March. They booked Underwood because they'd always booked Underwood. The handshakes were mine. The work was mine. The reputation was mine. The house was mine. Every sanded floor, every rebuilt column, every screen I'd stretched and stapled on this porch. Every room I'd renovated on weekends while telling myself it was for the family. Turned out it was. Just not the family I'd expected. Josie closed the scrapbook and set it on the arm of her chair. She looked at the yard, the lightning bugs, the smoker. You competing Saturday? I am. Can I come? I looked at her, wouldn't miss it. Theo turned a page without looking up. Can I bring my book? You can bring whatever you want, buddy. The ceiling fan turned. Moths bumped against the screen under the porch light. Inside, through the doorway, the 11 scrapbooks sat on the shelf I'd built into the wall. Josie's now. The happy memories belonged to her, even the staged ones. A child deserves to keep what was good. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the neighborhood settle into evening. The journal beside my elbow. My daughter planning her Saturday. My son reading about rings of ice and rock that circled a planet 600 million miles away. Some things can't be rushed. Brisket is done when the bone pulls clean and the bark holds its color and the internal temp hits 203 without anyone forcing it there. I don't set the timeline. I set the conditions and wait. Patience isn't a virtue. It's the whole religion. And some things are done when they're done.